What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down the Poly Casino 400 at Auto Club Speedway for Sunday, February 26 around 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And we are in typical sunny Fontana, California, although as you can tell, that is not the case this weekend. Tons of rain in the forecast. Looks like it's going to be tapering off for Sunday though, so the race should be in good hands, but we do have lights if need be. And we are fresh off the Daytona 500, which I thought was a very good race. They were side by side for nearly the entirety of the race, and we had the crashes at the end, which us DFS players and NASCAR fans in general are always waiting for. But we do shift gears here to an intermediate track this week, so do not think the strategy is going to be the same, although with the way the qualifying order is shaken up, honestly, it doesn't look too far off. But before we get too far into it, if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. You can also find me live on Sunday mornings breaking down the entire slate, answering any question you may end up having. I highly recommend you being there because I love to hear from you and it's always a good time. And you can expect me to be there around 11 a.m. on Sunday, so make sure you RSVP and come in, say hello, and ask a question if you need to. And what we like to do here in these videos is I like to talk a little bit of strategy, breaking down the components of each race because it's going to change each and every single week depending on the racetrack. So we'll go over the track, break down how many dominators we should use, and strategize how roster construction should look like. We'll go driver by driver, breaking it all down. Then I'll say sayonara, and I'll see you guys on the live stream. So I like to keep it simple here, and that sounds fine and dandy to you, but you can do me one small thing in return. Leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet done so, and feel free to leave a comment down below, being nice, being mean. I don't really care either way, but I'd love to hear from you. And I would like to set a goal here. If we can get over 350 likes this week, I would truly appreciate that. I said it at 300 last week. We broke 500, which was absolutely incredible. So hats off to you all. I appreciate you. And really quick here, gotta pay some bills, but they do make these shows possible. But we have Prize Picks and Underdog, and on both sites, you can use promo code CPEN to get an instant deposit match bonus up to $100. And if you are like myself and do not live in a legal betting state, you probably hit up a friend to play some bets for you, which I know I certainly have done that before. But this is kind of your work away around it. It's DFS and prop betting kind of mixed into one. Super fun to play on, and they do offer NASCAR props, which I do now offer projections for my spreadsheet and mention in the article as well. So if you want to check it out, again, that's promo code CPEN and tell them I sent you, and we'll both help each other out. All right, so moving on to the strategy portion of this, it's going to be a lot different from last week, although at the same time, it's not just based off of how qualifying I should say, went. But we had it rained out, and we've only had one race, and it was Daytona, so a lot of good cars wrecked out. And the way the starting formula works out, it's like 85% almost how they finished the race last weekend, and 15% like a fast lap or something like that. So we have a lot of good names in the back, so it kind of does turn into a stack the back type race, although not in the same sense because fast laps are actually projectable this week, unlike Daytona. So dominator points are still important, but with the big name drivers we have in the back, the lack of dominator points that they get early on, they can make up for with the massive place differential that they offer us. So we have guys like Christopher Bell and Joey Logano starting closer to the front, but there's a lot more downside there because unless they stay within the top 5 and lead a good chunk of laps, they're probably not going to outscore these drivers starting in the very back that can pick up 30-ish fantasy points just based off of place differential alone. And who's to say they can't get up front, lead laps, or get fast laps throughout the field as they march forward. So that's one kind of interesting twist this week. If we had a normal qualifying order where a lot of the good names were starting closer to the front, I would say we're probably picking between 1 to 2 DOMs here with some place differential plays or high finishing guys. But with the way the qualifying order shakes up, there's a lot of big names in the back, which is going to lead to us kind of leaning towards place differential. And that's kind of backed up with the amount of laps we have this week. We only have 200 on the schedule, which equates to 140 dominator points. And we saw at these kind of tracks last year, there usually wasn't one guy that just dominated the entire race. Yeah, sure, there's some outlier ones, but a lot of times we saw multiple guys up front. So I'm not sure there's going to be one driver that just runs away with this race and racks up so many dominator points, you're going to absolutely have to need them in your lineup. It's certainly possible, and that's why I'm saying in tournaments, I want to get exposure to some of these guys starting closer to the front that can do that. But the place differential can make up for the early loss and laps led. So a couple ways to look at that. In tournaments, yes, I'm looking at some of these lap leaders to swap out from just the pure place differential plays, but in cash games, I'm strictly going PD. And moving on to the driver by driver breakdown portion here, I do have to mention a couple things first. So first off, if you want to join the best NASCAR DFS community out there, links down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. Tons of extra content over there, the entire NASCAR mile, not just what I show you guys for free on YouTube, projections for DraftKings, FanDuel, in Prize Picks, simulation scores, top dominator tools, top win percentages. We have the betting calculator, betting stuff in there as well, which I did add on this season. Everything's completely revamped with the model here, and you get access to the Discord community, which is awesome. We are in there 24/7, just chilling, answering questions, and having a good time for the most part. And also have access to the optimizer and the ownership projections, sim scores, optimal rates, leverage scores, and everything you can imagine. It's on there, pit data, green flag speed, and whatnot. And also my cash and tournament article, which I do each and every single week, breaking down the slate. And I should mention, Patreon no longer charges on the first of the month. It's just a 30-day cycle when you do sign up. So if you want access to all the extra content down there, I think you'll find a lot of value from it. Links down below in the description or the pinned comment. All right, sorry for the long commercial, but these videos are free, so I guess we can't complain too much, right? Anyway, let's start up top with Kyle Larson, the 10K range, 10.8 on DraftKings, 14 flat over on FanDuel. He's got the best odds to win this race over in Vegas. He's starting in 15th. And I love him in all formats. When I was running early sims this week, he was the guy popping off the chart here, basically first in every single category. Top dominator, top win percentage, top just about everything. Now, some of those numbers, they come down a little bit just due to the fact of where he's starting this race. I mean, it's hard to be the top dominator if you are starting 15th, but I still think the upside is there for him. He just has some work to do early on. Now, I was planning on playing Larson in just about all formats here, but with the way how qualifying shaked out, I feel like Chase Elliott will be the spend up in cash games, which I get. He was not nearly as good as the high tire wear tracks last year as Kyle Larson, but you're mainly just chasing place differential there for the most part. But if you're looking at the similar tracks from last year, now I have a larger sample size where it adds the high tire wear tracks plus all the 1.5s. But if you're looking at the 4 races in specific, which I care the most about, it's going to be Auto Club from last year, the 2 Darlington races, and Homestead. Those are mainly the high tire wear tracks that we have to look at. And Larson absolutely killed those last season. Averaged the most DraftKings points per race at them, had the second or third best driver rating, had 2 wins, led the most laps, had the most fast laps, won this race last year. So I have a hard time not liking Kyle Larson. And if everyone's going to flock to Chase Elliott in tournaments, which I get it in cash games, I will be doing that as well. But I like to pivot to Kyle Larson because if he can get up front, dominate, and finish top 3 or win the race, he is probably going to be a better play than Chase Elliott. So I'm loving Larson in tournaments. Denny Hamlin's kind of in the same boat there at $10,600. He's got the second best odds to win this race over in Vegas. And while he wasn't as good as Kyle Larson, not many people were, he was still pretty good in his own right, and he is good at these track types. And if we look at the sim scores tab, he doesn't project too far off of Kyle Larson. And by the way, if I was using one thing each and every single week to build laps and whatnot, the sim scores tab would be it. It's got just pretty much every single thing you need. But as you can see, I have Hamlin right behind Larson as of right now. I mean, things can change a little bit throughout the weekend, but I think it's probably going to stay pretty much the same here. I have Larson and Hamlin as the 2 highest win percentages, and while they don't offer as much dominator points as some of the other drivers, they can make up for that starting not completely mid-pack, but they have some place differential upside, not as much compared to others, but they have a lot less dominator chance, so it all kind of balances out. And projection-wise, I only have Hamlin a couple spots below Larson here. As you see, I got Larson close to 51, Denny Hamlin right around 46.5, and pretty similar on FanDuel since dominator points aren't as important over there. But yeah, like I said, I mean, if you want to look at the sim scores tab, it tells you pretty much everything you need, ownership projections and optimal probabilities and leverage scores and things like that, which is super helpful because NASCAR DFS, a lot of the thing is just, it's a big ownership game for the most part. And they're dropping down on Chase Elliott, $10,500. He's starting in 33rd, similar odds to win this race as Denny Hamlin over in Vegas, which kind of surprising to me just because of the fact Chase Elliott was not that great at these track types last year. I know he had some issues finishing wise just off of bad luck, but even then, green flag speed wise, it wasn't that great. He was in the lower teens. He did have 1 top 5 and 2 top 10s, but wasn't really a dominator. Average finish of 20.3, running position of 17.5, which is kind of right on par with his green flag speed. I think he's a cash game lock, sure, showing in 33rd. I would play Elliott over Hamlin, over Larson in cash games, but in tournaments, I don't mind the pivot to guys like Larson or Denny Hamlin or even Kyle Busch, who we're about to talk about. So I do like Elliott. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, as far as ownership is concerned, I feel like we might have more positive leverage on the 2 drivers we already talked about rather than Chase Elliott here. It would not surprise me if he's optimal in tournaments. I mean, he doesn't have to do much starting in 33rd to be optimal. Just don't kill your race. But I'm just talking about ways to get different in tournaments here because obviously the chalk is going to be Chase Elliott. Kyle Busch makes for an interesting pivot here at $10,300. He's starting in 21st. And talk about bad luck for Kyle Busch last year. He ran well, but there were some races where just finish-wise it didn't work out. But he did have the 3rd most laps led at these higher tire wear tracks last year of all drivers, only behind Logano and Kyle Larson. But average finish outside the top 20, only 22.3 DraftKings points per race here. But if you're looking at intermediates in general, which is a larger sample size of 11 races, 4 top 5s, 5 top 10s, good chunk of dominator points. But again, some of the finishes are a bit skewed just based off of bad luck. But I don't mind Kyle Busch. The 8 car was fantastic here last year. Fantastic at high tire wear tracks. I realize it's a different driver. But Kyle Busch is pretty good at Auto Club. It would not surprise me if he ends up being a really good play here. So if you're trying to get off of Chase Elliott again, you can go to Kyle Busch, and he even offers you more place differential upside than guys like Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin. Then we have Ryan Blaney here at $10,100. He's starting in 9th. I feel like he will run well, but I just don't really see him dominating. It's possible, but you already have guys like Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, Joey Logano starting closer to the front. Those are really the only big names up there. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody else. It's a pretty weak group in the top 10. But even then, by the time Ryan Blaney contends to get close to the front, that's when guys like Elliott, Larson, Hamlin, even Byron Reddick could be up there by then. So at that point, I'd rather just have them. There's not that many dominator points to go around, so I'm not super in love with Ryan Blaney here. If I'm playing 20, 150 max, yeah, I'm probably getting some shares in, but I'm not playing Blaney in a 3 max or single entry format. Dropping down to the 9K range, we have Ross Chastain at $9,900, 95 over on FanDuel. He's starting in 8th. He's an interesting play. We know he's got dominator upside each and every single week. He showed that last year. And it was hills and valleys with Ross. There was a lot of good weeks, and there was a lot of really, really bad weeks. A lot of it was bad luck because he was running well, and then he just wrecked and finished last. But he's kind of in a similar boat to Ryan Blaney here, where I just don't think he's going to dominate enough to be a better play than some of the place differential guys. So I'll have lower exposure to him. Not a bad play, but I think you guys see what I'm trying to say. Joey Logano, $9,700. He's starting in 3rd. He's actually popping off in the optimal this week, not in the optimal, in the model this week. And he's actually showing as a pretty good bet in Vegas value-wise at plus 1,200 because he killed these track types last year. Actually had the best drive rating at the high tire wear tracks, had the most top 5s, had the second most laps led, only behind Kyle Larson, the best running position, the best average finish, if you exclude Allmendinger because he only had 1 race. So yeah, Logano is popping a lot more than I thought he would. He usually only pops for me at the short flat tracks, but he was pretty good at these track types last year, and he was a top 5 machine at Auto Club, and starting in 3rd, he really only has to get by Christopher Bell. You have Stenhouse in the front row, and then you have some other kind of mid-packish cars starting in the top 10 around Logano, besides like Blaney and Ross Chastain a few spots further back. So I think it's either going to be Bell or Logano that leads the laps early on, and I wouldn't be surprised on either one here. The problem is they're starting so far up. They have the upside's not that high because if they just lose any spots here, I mean, they're probably going to get blown away by guys like Reddick and Byron unless they lead a large chunk of this race and contend to be in the top 5, top 3. So just know there is risk there. If I had to pick between the two of Bell or Logano, I'm probably picking Logano just because you get 2 extra place differential spots. And Logano was pretty good at these track types last year. But Bell in the pole, I mean, he only has to beat Stenhouse, so it shouldn't be that hard to do. It's just a matter of, is Logano going to be faster than him? Is he going to pass him? And we've seen where it's kind of hard to lead a large chunk of these intermediate track type races from what we saw last year. I mean, I'm hoping that's not going to be completely the case because, we saw last year where just tire issues were a problem, especially for this race. There were so many cautions. I'm hoping it doesn't end up like that. We just got to be careful with them starting close to the front. And projection-wise, they're not going to be nearly as good as guys like Byron, Reddick, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott. But they make for interesting pivots in tournaments if you're just trying to lock in some laps led and if you think they can stay near the front. And if anything happens to the place differential guys, you'll be looking pretty good in tournaments with those two. Martin Truex Jr. starting in 14th at $9,300. I actually like him a lot in tournaments. Might be one of my favorite tournament plays because he had, I believe, the second best average green flag speed at the high tower tracks last year, only behind William Byron. And it feels like Truex only does good when people don't want to play him. And obviously everyone's playing Reddick, everyone's playing Byron. I think people might take some stabs at Bell in the pole, Joey Logano starting within the top 5. And obviously you have Ross Chastain up there as well. So Truex might go a bit overlooked, but he's pretty good at these track types and good at high tire wear tracks. And I like the price point. He's pretty much a similar play to Larson and Hamlin in my opinion, but he's like over $1,000 cheaper. So I'm assuming once I run sims, Truex will show some positive leverage. So I'm thinking he's a pretty good turn play as of right now. Then we have the two chalk galore plays. Tyler Reddick at $9,100 starting in 35th, and then William Byron at $8,900 starting in 32nd. And both these drivers are excellent at high tire wear tracks. Both were really good at Auto Club last year, but both ended up having issues. But both were in the lead at some point, and both are top 5 in green flag speed. William Byron's actually first, and Byron did have the second best running position and the second best drive rating at the high tire wear tracks last year and a good chunk of Dominator points. So the only way Reddick and Byron are not optimal is if they happen to wreck out. Outside of that, they're more than likely going to be in the optimal and contending for top 10s, if not the win. And the betting portion of my model here did show some really nice leverage on William Byron early in the week at plus 1,800. So I got a bet on him. And he's down to 1,600 now on DraftKings. He was all the way down to plus 1,000 on FanDuel. So still some slight value there, but 1,600 is not going to be as good as 1,800, obviously. But just letting you guys know that I did have a bet on William Byron. And Joey Logano was also popping off on the betting sheet as well. Bubba Wallace, $8,700. He's starting in 18th. Seems a bit overpriced in my opinion. Starting up beside Byron and Reddick, not starting, but priced right around those guys. Just going to make it hard for him to pop up in optimal builds and whatnot. So I don't really see myself having much Bubba Wallace at all. Kevin Harvick, $8,500, starting in 10th. Good at the tire wear tracks. He did have 3 top 10s at them last year. Not really a threat to dominate whatsoever. But for where he's starting, again, it's a tougher path, just being priced right by Reddick and Byron. But if you're looking for pivots off of those two, Kevin Harvick's not bad, but I don't love it. Alex Bowman, $8,300. He's someone I do have my eye on. He's starting in 4th. Projections are not going to like him. I know my projections don't really like him either. I only have him around 30 points, if that. It's like anywhere from 27 to 32, I think. I forget what that range was, where he landed. So I can't really get him to pop up in lineups too much. And I get it. I mean, starting in 4th, and there's just so many differential plays in these price ranges where it just doesn't make sense for Bowman to pop up much. I did give him a decent portion of the Dominator points, especially at this kind of a price point. But, man, it's just really tough here starting in the top 5, especially when you have to pass guys like Logano and Bell to get there. But he's pretty good at the tire wear tracks. I know last year didn't really show it. I mean, 15.2 DraftKings points per race and not even a top 5 and absolutely no Dominator points. But don't forget in the past, I know it was with not the next-gen car, but he was good at the Darlington races and around the COVID era. And he dominated one Auto Club the COVID season in 2020. And he also won a Chicagoland, which is a high tire wear intermediate track as well. So he's had success at the tire wear tracks before. Obviously didn't really have that last year, but just someone I'm keeping an eye on. If I'm playing single entry or 3 max, I'm not getting the Bowman. But if I'm playing 20 max or 150 max, might throw him in a lineup or 2 there. Just someone to keep an eye on. Austin Dillon, $8,100. He's starting in 28th. Finish-wise, great last year. I mean, nearly 50 DraftKings points per race, an average finish of 8th and 3 top 10s, and in the top 20 each and every single time. But the running position was barely inside the top 20, so obviously there was some luck involved there. But starting nearly in 30th place, he's someone that I do have some interest in. Another reason why it's hard to get the Bowen, because he was starting 24 spots higher than that Austin Dillon. And Dillon does not have to do much to hit value there. Although at his price point, it's going to be easier to get the guys like Jones and Briscoe because the upside's even better for them, and they're just about $1,000 cheaper. So I'm not going to get to as much Dillon as those guys, but he's still a fine play. Dropping down to the 7K range, we have Brad Keselowski at $7,900. He's starting at 16th. Don't see myself getting too much Brad here. Did have 2 top 10s at the tire wear tracks last year and wasn't terrible at the intermediates or anything. But it's just for where he's starting. I mean, for $200 more, I can get Dillon, and for even less money, I can get guys like Jones, Briscoe, and even Priest, who are going to project better than Brad Keselowski. So I don't see myself having too much there. But he's a pivot option, but that's about it. Austin Cindric at $7,800, starting at 19th. Kind of starting right around where I think he's going to finish. I mean, he's about a 16th place car at these track types last year. Finished in the top 20 each and every single time with 1 top 15, but I think the upside is limited here, especially being right beside Jones and Briscoe, who are going to be 2 other very chalky plays. I do prefer Jones over Briscoe, and we'll talk Jones here first, $7,700, starting in 34th. Just really good at the tire wear tracks last season, 2 top 5s. Did not have success at a couple of them, but it was really good at Auto Club and was really good in Darlington where he won that race, which are 2 of his better tracks, and he's actually one of the better drivers at Auto Club. Keep in mind, back in the day, it wasn't Joe Gibbs equipment, now with Legacy Motor Club and former Petty GMS, but he had one of the best cars here last year. Green flag speed-wise, tops of the chart, and honestly, almost won the race, picking up fast laps, running second, I believe, for the large chunk of that race. Had a really fast car, starting all the way in the back here in 34th. You don't need him too much here, so if you're playing cash games, he's a lock. If you're playing tournaments, I know the ownership's going to be really high, but really hard to get away from mid-range value here for a driver that has top 15 upside. And Briscoe, in a similar boat here, wasn't nearly as good as Eric Jones at the high tire wear tracks last year, but starting in the 30s, I mean, it's just hard to pass up. Daniel Suarez, $7,300. He's starting in 7th. Actually, pretty good at these track types last year. He had 3 top 10s, 1 top 5, average finish of 10.5. The problem is for where he's starting 7th, so the upside is pretty limited. I think if Suarez has a good day, we're talking like a fringe top 10 performance. And the fact that Briscoe and Jones are starting over 20 spots further back, it just makes it really hard to get the Suarez there. If you're looking for a flyer pivot in tournaments, I don't mind it off of Briscoe, but again, the path is much, much harder for Suarez there. Stenhouse is a complete fade for me. I know he wasn't bad at these track types last year, but I can't see him dominating over the likes of Logano or Christopher Bell early on, and I assume he's only going to fall back. So, congrats to Ricky winning the 500. Hats off to you. You helped me win some money, but I think I'm going to hop off the train here this week. More than happily fade Ricky Stenhouse starting inside the top 3. Chris Buescher starting in the top 5. Again, similar to Ricky Stenhouse, where I just don't really see it working out. I feel like he's going to finish outside the top 12. So I just don't see any upside for Chris Buescher. And even at these track types last year, we're talking about a guy that had an average finish, an average running position of 22nd place. Ryan Preece is someone I can get behind, though, $6,700. I'm a big fan of Preece. I think he's going to be a big upgrade over Cole Custer in this car. And he's already shown it this year. I mean, we saw some flashes at the Clash and then, Daytona's Daytona. But I did like the upside we saw at the Clash there early on. Starting in 27th, I mean, this is a guy that I projected to finish inside the top 20. So, I mean, obviously upside there at that price point, starting nearly in 30th place. Eric Almirola, $6,500. He's starting in 17th. That has some success at these track types last year. Now, the average finish was a lot better than the average running position. So, yeah, sure, a little bit of luck involved there. But 3 top 15 finishes, averaging nearly 40 DraftKings points per race. I don't think he's a terrible play, but I would rather play Ryan Preece. But to be honest, this 6K range isn't very good outside of Preece. Allmendinger, we have a 1-race sample size where we finished 3rd at a high tire wear track last year. That's just too small of a sample size to look at. Starting in 6th, that's just the guy that I can't get to. I'm not going to be playing Dinger. Gregson and Gibbs, the 2 rookies here, priced right next to each other. I guess DK is just going to hate Gibbs all season long. Like, it's just so weird seeing a Joe Gibbs racing car priced so low every single week. But he's a rookie, I get it. There's going to be growing pains. But, I mean, we saw upside from him last year. Now, again, it's going to be ups and downs for Ty Gibbs, especially in his first season as a Cup driver, which I know, again, he kind of had like a half year last year filling in for Kurt Busch. But, this is his first full-time ride in the 54 car. Starting in 23rd, I mean, he's fine. I feel like he's got fringe top 20 upside, but him and Gregson are very similar plays, but I would prefer Gibbs over Gregson just because you get 3 extra spots. And I feel like I can trust the Joe Gibbs cars a little bit more. Dropping down to the 5K range, we have Justin Haley at $5,900. He's starting just about in the back here, 29th. I think he's fine. Was a top 20 finisher at these track types last year. Had 2 of them out of 4 races. Average finish of 18.3. Running position around 21st. Not expecting much from Haley, but if you just don't lose me spots, I'll be happy because he lets me fits in studs. Michael McDowell, very similar play to Justin Haley. 2 top 10s at these track types last year. Average finished at 15th. A little bit better numbers overall. I prefer Haley just because he gets a couple spots further back, but very similar plays, and I'll probably have maybe not equal, but pretty similar exposure to both of us, slightly into Haley. Burton, I would just prefer the other 2 above him, but somewhat of a similar play. Also a guy that can finish in the top 20. It's just starting in 24th compared to 29th to 26th. Not going to project out as well, but overall, I feel like they all finished pretty similar to each other. Ty Dillon, still mad at him about Daytona. It was still a fine race for me because they had a lot of Pastrana, a lot of Herbst, and some other guys in the back, but just the chances of Ty Dillon being the first guy that dies just because of an engine issue, not even a wreck. I mean, I thought for sure that would be Connor Daly, but no, it's Ty Dillon. Sucked, man. If he would have just survived there, he probably would have been a top 20 car at the end of the day and would have crushed, but this is what it is. Obviously downgraded equipment this year, no longer in the 42 car. No, Gregson took that over, so now he's in the 77 with Spire, which is the junker, so don't expect much here out of Ty Dillon this season. I know he's starting dead last, but if this was last year at this price point, starting dead last, we'd be all about Ty Dillon, but this year, I haven't projected to finish over guys like Ware, McLeod, and Yaley, and I'm sure there's going to be some wrecks where he's going to gain some spots, but it's just going to be tough to trust that there. Core the Joy, no thank you, starting in 12th. That is way too high for me. Gilliland, not terrible in my opinion, starting in 25th at $5,000. Did have 2 top 20 finishes at these track types last year, but I wish he was starting a little bit further back. I would prefer just not to play any of these scrubs below like Burton, really. But if you're forced to get to one of them, I mean, Dillon and Gilliland are going to be the ones I'd prefer, but it doesn't feel great. And then Ware, McLeod, Yaley, they're all starting too far up, and I don't play junkers at non-play tracks for the most part, so I'll be passing on all those 3. With that being said, guys, that's all I got for you this week. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure you leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. Make sure you follow me over onto the live stream on Sunday on this channel around 11 a.m. Eastern. Ask any question you want. I'll be more than happy to answer it. Hope to see you all there. If you have any more other questions, you can leave them down in the comment section down below. And I think that's all I got for you. So if you want to become a member, like I said, links down below in the description for that. Promo code CPEN will get you instant deposit match bonus up to $100 on Prize Picks and Underdog. But I think that's all I got for you. I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all Sunday.